Your Honors, may I have the privilege to present the different issues thrown against the AFP and the corresponding AFP actions and responses, particularly by the 6th Infantry Division during the Mama Sapano incident. And this briefing will follow the topics as shown. In reference to the reports emanating from the incident, the succeeding issues were raised against the AFP, and on the alleged delay reinforcements. Included on the Senate Committee report were questions on why didn't the AFP send help immediately, and did the strategy to promote the peace process hinder the AFP from engaging in a more aggressive response. On artillery fire, as contained in page 89 of the PNP BOI report, artillery support from the 6th Infantry Division was not delivered when needed most, due to the ongoing peace process and protocols in the use of artillery. Likewise, in page 101, summary of the Senate Committee report, questions were mentioned such as should the AFP have fired white phosphorus or artillery rounds much earlier, and on the alleged stand-down order. The AFP was allegedly ordered to stand down to protect the peace process with the MILF. These questions were highlighted during public hearings, which placed the armed forces of the Philippines in a bad light and created friction and divide between the AFP and the PNP. In this light, this briefing is aimed to clear up such issues in order to clarify the stand down of the AFP, of its immediate response, and lay down the truth on what really happened in the Mama Sapano incident. On the alleged delayed reinforcements, the AFP immediately consolidated and organized reinforcing troops upon knowledge of the developing situation. The following specific actions can be cited. It can be recalled that it was only after more than 1 hour upon the start of the firefight when the AFP received the first information about the SAF operations, when 6th Infantry Division received text messages and calls from Police Superintendent De La Rosa, PNP SAF, Operations Officer, then later from Police Director Napeñas, Director of the SAF on 5:28 a.m. Nonetheless, the AFP mobilized its forces with the initial deployment of security forces at 6:30 a.m. 6th ID forces were consolidated and organized for the conduct of reinforcement operations in which movement of troops and armored vehicles, composed of 1 light armor platoon, 1 mechanized section, 1 section of 62nd Division Recon Company, and 1 explosive ordnance demolition team started at around 8:20 a.m. After which, the AFP forces were able to link up with the PNP SAF in their command post in Barangay Tucana Lipao at 9 a.m., took guidance from Police Superintendent Mangaldan, the PNP SAF ground commander, and started their attempt to reinforce the beleaguered SAF troops. However, due to the absence of communications brought about by the non-interoperability of radios with the forward SAF elements and the heavy gunfire from the enemy, the combined troops were unable to go near the engaged SAF elements. 2 UH-1H helicopters from Pagadian, used to support ongoing operations of the 1st Infantry Division, arrived at Tactical Operations Group 12 in Awang, Dato Odin, Sinsuat, Maguindanao at 10:52 a.m. to provide air evacuation if requested, but such was not requested by the SAF. The combined government troops pushed for the conduct of a 12 hours of rescue and retrieval operations that started at around 5:30 p.m. In totality, there were 211 AFP personnel with 6 armored vehicles who assisted the 300 plus SAF who were near the highway and who supposed to reinforce the 55th and the 8th Fort SAC but failed. Despite these difficulties, the AFP actions resulted to the following: the rescue of the 17 unharmed 84th SAC, the retrieval of the 8 killed in action and 11 wounded in action, 1 of which expired while in the hospital, the recovery of the 84th SAC equipment, and the retrieval of the 35 killed in action from the 55th SAC with the support of the local government unit and the mechanisms of the CCCH and the AJAC. And these were accomplished under extreme conditions such as limited visibility during the actual link-up of the AFP and beleaguered SAF forces, no radio contact with the 84th SAC, open and marshy terrain characterized by multiple neck and waist deep water tributaries, and the presence of other armed groups. On the issue of artillery fire, The mandatory information for the delivery of field artillery fires were not present during the first 4 requests from the SAF. It was only on the 5th request at 5:35 p.m. when the necessary information were already available that the artillery fires were provided. AFP doctrine dictates that the mandatory information needed for artillery fire support or a call for fire were absent, such as location with grid coordinates of friendly forces, the forward observer, civilian population, location of enemy or target, the description of the target, its method of engagement of the target, and fire and control measures. Note also that there was no trained forward observer and no radio contact with the engaged SAF during the first 4 requests of the SAF. The first request was made by Police Chief Superintendent Talino when he visited the headquarters of the 1st Mechanized Brigade at around 7 a.m., wherein Chief Superintendent Talino failed to give the grid coordinates of the location of the engaged SAF, the enemy, and other SAF elements. The second request for fire support was made by the SAF at 8:35 a.m., but since only the location of the engaged PNP SAF was given and other elements for call for fire were absent, the delivery of field artillery fires was not approved. Likewise, the data provided is doubtful, since the enemy location is about 1 kilometer from the location of the reported engaged SAF, and it is very near the community. The third request was made at 9:10 a.m. Although there were 2 known locations of the SAF, the artillery fire cannot be delivered due to the following: no forward observer, no communication with the SAF engaged troops and other friendly troops. The given location is near a community and it is very near the SAF troops. The following prohibitions were also present: the gun target line, which refers to the location of the friendly troops which is along the flight path of the projectile; danger close, referring to the distance from the projectile impact point, is very close to the location of friendly troops, and there is a high risk and probability of hitting friendly forces or the forward observer; and no fire area, referring to areas which prohibit firing due to the presence of civilians. The fourth request was made at 1:01 p.m., wherein 5 SAF positions were already known. However, the delivery of indirect fire still cannot be provided since the same prohibitions existed. The fifth request was at 5:35 p.m., and at 5:48 p.m., the delivery of artillery fires of white phosphorus was executed in view of the following: all SAF troops locations are now known. There is now communications with engaged SAF troops or the seaborne. The given location is far from the community, and there is now a forward observer in the 61st Division Recon Company. On the alleged stand-down order, the AFP is firm that there was no stand-down order whatsoever from higher authorities. The following can clearly attest to this: Commander 6ID initiated actions to support the SAF. Commander Westmincom instructed Commander 6ID to provide support to the SAF. And Commander Westmincom deployed 2 UH-1H helicopters at Tactical Operations Group 12 in Awang, Datu, Odin, Sinswat, Maguindanao. At this point, let me discuss the various factors that affected the AFP support to O-Plan Exodus. The first factor is the redeployment of forces prior to the incident. Shown is the disposition of 6 ID forces prior to the incident. 5 battalions were pulled out from 6 ID area and redeployed outside its area of responsibility. As such, 6 ID forces were thinly dispersed. Likewise, at that time, there was no air assets prepositioned in the area. It can also be recalled that there was an ongoing operation in Salapada, Cape and Datun, Maguindanao, involving the 61st and the 62nd Division Recon Companies. These forces were 30 kilometers away from the area of incident, and it would take 4 to 6 hours to preposition. Illustrated further are the units with their corresponding aerial distance to the encounter site. Headquarters 6ID in Awang, Datu, Odin, Sinswat, Maguindanao is 43 kilometers aerial distance. Headquarters 601st Brigade in Tacurong City with 36 kilometers. Headquarters 45th Infantry Battalion in Datu Unsay, Maguindanao, 12 kilometers. 1st Mechanized Brigade in Sarif Agwak, 11 kilometers. And the Maguindanao Provincial Police Office, situated in Datu Hofer, Maguindanao, also 11 kilometers aerial distance away. 45th IB is the infantry battalion that covers the Mama Sapano area. It has 3 maneuver companies with a platoon of its Bravo company as the most proximate to the incident area at more or less 5 kilometers away, and shown are the disposition of proximate AFP forces to the area of incident. The next slide shows the disposition of different armed groups in totality. The vicinity of Mama Sapano is a lair to 631 fighters with 626 firearms from 4 different groups which coexist in that complex. Second, there was a deliberate withholding of information about the SAF operation, which misled the AFP and local PNP forces, and the following accounts can be cited. The uncoordinated movement of SAF troops, which was done in trickles using civilian vehicles. The invitation of Police Senior Superintendent Ozaeta, case officer of the Khalifa Islamiyah Movement Special Task Force, for a fellowship dinner with the 601st Brigade and 45th IB Commander staff on January 24, 2015 at Coronadal City, in which no mention was made of any PNP SAF movement or operation. The unannounced and unusual visit of Police Inspector Santos, Provincial Police Safety Company of Maguindanao, at Headquarters Bravo Company of the 45th Infantry Battalion at 5 a.m. of January 25, 2015. He was received by Technical Sergeant Castillo, the First Sergeant of the Infantry Company. First Sergeant Castillo asked Police Inspector Santos if they have any special operations in the area. The latter did not answer. First Sergeant Castillo also asked if they coordinated with the 45th Infantry Battalion. The latter answered that he did not know. Likewise, information was also not relayed to the local PNP counterparts, as there was no knowledge of Police Senior Superintendent Hoxon, the Provincial Director of Maguindanao, of the SAF operation. And the AFP was left out with no information about the actual strength, disposition, location, and absence of communication with engaged SAF troops. At this point, we would like to show a video taken by 1st Mechanized Brigade troops while underway to the general location of the SAF, showing SAF troops who were on standby while the encounter was going on. The B-150 shown earlier belonged to the SAF.
Buksan nyo muna dyan sa gilid. Kulang nga pick up. Saan pa banda yung hinaharas? Saan pa banda yun? Yung hinaharas na tropa nyo, saan pa? Doon, sa kanan. Sige. Balik sila, balik ka.
Sir, hintayin ka pa namin, sir.
Sakay. Asa banda? Mga ilang kilometer pa? Isa pa, may isa?
Isara yan kagad. Isara kagad dahil dyan yung ano.
Sige, mamaya na. Mag-usap sila doon. Sakay pa siguro.
Dami naman sila, no?
Dami pala nila. Ito pang kung baga sa atin sir, reindeer na yun. Sige sir.
Truckman kasi.
the disposition of the 300 plus SAF troops was not known to the AFP. The SAF troops prepositioned in the highway was a significant force that could have provided immediate reinforcement. As to why they did not do so remains to be a question that has to be answered by Police Director Napeñas. The third factor that can be cited is a problem on radio communications. Tactical radios of the armed forces and the PNP SAF were not interoperable during the incident. Likewise, different maps were used, unscaled Google Maps and military-scaled maps. Because of this, there were different perspectives or appreciation as to the location of the contending forces that could result to inaccuracy in identifying specific locations of troops and the enemy. Shown is a picture to illustrate this deficiency. The fifth factor is that there was no established SAF tactical command post with competent battle staff that will provide direction or make adjustments to address the operational requirements of the fast-changing and fluid situation of a fierce gun battle. The picture shows us the type of facility they refer to as a command post, which is an incongruous red pickup. Another factor was the glaring lack of knowledge of the PNP SAF as regards to the requisites of delivering an effective artillery fire support procedure and ceasefire protocols. It was obvious that even before the planning process, Police Director Napeñas failed to consider the elements of call for fire procedures, such as the location of own troops, friendly forces, forward observer, the enemy and the target, civilians, and method of engagement. And also, there was no coordination at all. From the AFP glossary of military terms, coordination is the act of informing a department of or a person of a course of action so that he can either fit his own actions into the proposed course of action or take steps to modify the proposed course of action to make it fit into his own. And using other references, the definition of coordination is as shown. Moreover, another critical factor was that there was no tactical plan presented to the armed forces. Detailed planning of the conduct of the operation was kept secret within the hierarchy of the SAF. Clearly, the AFP was left out. Moreover, Plan Exodus was only a concept plan. It lacks the essential elements of a complete and deliberate operational plan. There was no consideration of assumptions on the plan, no abort criteria, and no annexes. Shown is an example of the contents of an operational plan. And the military decision-making framework. And lastly, there was no sense of urgency on the part of Police Director Napeñas in conveying critical information on the condition of the engaged SAF troops. Let me invite the attention of everyone to take a closer look at the picture taken at around 4:14 p.m. at Headquarters 1st Mechanized Brigade. Here, Director Napeñas and party who were still in civilian attire can even afford to smile in spite of the dire situation faced by his troops at the encounter site. It shows that he was detached from the reality of the SAF operation. We can also glean from the picture that Director Napeñas was not completely aware of what was happening on the ground and that the magnitude of the SAF casualties. This further shows that the SAF leadership did not have a full grasp of the gravity of the situation all throughout the 11 hours period after the initial encounter. It can also be ascertained that being in civilian attire, Director Napeñas had no intention to lead from the front to see the battlefield, inspire and motivate his troops, especially at the most critical moment of the operation. Further, it can be construed that their mindset before and during the operation was something like, it's a walk in the park. Hence, there were no contingent actions, operational sequels or branches that would address and answer the what-ifs of the battle. Indeed, there was no sense of urgency on his part that impinged adversely on his capability to provide command and control. In the process, he failed to provide or exercise combat leadership and commandership to his troops. And when everything was said and done, he blamed everyone, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, including the President, for his failures. This kind of attitude and mindset, Your Honors, in the AFP's view, was the root of the problem that led to the debacle suffered by the SAF 44. In hindsight, with prior coordination, the AFP could have done the following: discreetly preposition forces in critical and strategic areas, discreetly provided situational awareness to selected AFP commanders for operational security, prepared all components of the combat support system such as artillery, close air support, casualty evacuation, intelligence, command, signal, and logistics, could have contained the MILF and other armed groups, and assisted the PNP SAF in the planning process. In conclusion, as we reflect on the Mama Sapano incident, let me state that the success of any combat operation is much dependent and on how much effort one gives in planning, which was also clearly stated in the Senate Committee report, to which the AFP strongly agrees. And I quote, "If only the all-plan exodus that was prepared by Napeñas contained all the foregoing," referring to the supposed annexes of the plan, "it might have made it easier for the nearby AFP units in the area to provide support or reinforcement plans for execution, even on short notice, even on the so-called time-on-target basis. Napeñas merely informed the AFP time after target," end of quote. Aligned with the time-honored tradition of the military, the AFP is always ready to perform its mandated mission and is always willing to help. However, it is discerned that a commander's action in a developing situation is only as good as the information he receives. This ends the presentation. Thank you and good day, Your Honors.